Hey Lars, you're live.
Hey,
Hey, how are
um,
you? What's on your mind?
wow, I was like kind of in the middle of the nap and I saw you guys online
Mm-hmm.
and I'm Panama, by the way.
Yep.
I'm so thrilled to be on. Like I can't even believe this is real.
Why not? I got some new software. I've been working on this stuff for a long time. So, what's on your mind? Welcome.
Well, being in another country, it's always been a little bit it's been a little strange to participate because well, I'm in another country and you guys are all over there, but I am American, so um I don't know.
So, Panama is undergoing a lot of things. You want to tell us what you see on the ground? I'd love to. I mean, I read all your messages, right? And what you send. But I think it's extraordinary that you're the one that popped on. I mean, I'm kind of super excited. So,
Um well, I wow, where do I even start? I mean, I've been trying to figure out how to tell the truth to my government here because there are people that I know that are like in the legislature, um in the media and stuff, but like everyone's like they just can't receive information, it seems like. Like they read it, they get it, but they don't seem like they can't even say you're wrong or debate or anything. It's just like zero feedback, and it's been the strangest thing. And I like wonder, like, is there a tide here of truth? It's really hard to tell what's going on here. um
well, I mean, I was going to say it's normal because everyone is having this tide of truth. I mean, if you haven't watched the whole show, you should. First one is informative. It was after the break where I started story time that YouTube decided to nuke the account that I pay for, right? And
mhm.
so it's quite fascinating. I know that Panama is undergoing through a lot of changes. Remember, we created the Panama Canal. It was our military that did it, right? And we actually exploited all things Panama for trade and commerce at some point, obviously with consent of the country. But then, consent is like, what does that mean? Like, I
Mhm.
consent to a lot of terms on my phone, but it doesn't mean that they can use my likeness and image, right? And they
Mhm.
can't utilize the things that I put out in a negative light, yet the consent is a blanket. I just want to know how the Panamanians are seeing the reality of things. Like, are your news as bad as they are here in the United States, where they're all prompted, Mockingbird, etc.? I just want to have a short conversation because I have to hop off anyway. I've invaded my daughter's home because I have no
Sure,
internet in mine.
sure. So I feel like it's a little less robotic here. There's uh, there's a lot of main narratives that they do get from like Reuters and AP and stuff that are just like copy and paste. So like in terms of election fraud or like COVID origins, it's like the same stuff, but there is like a lot of person to person contact. The country's really small, so information gets around like person to person, and I feel like people are more on the ground and like have a little more of an organic approach to reporting news, and word gets around from between people. It's not like the media is like this far off like
Un-
tower just beaming everything
Uncontrollable
out.
machine, right? Because,
Yeah.
well, we have to be fair on the dynamics, though, right? In
Hmm.
Panama, everyone's going to be like, well, they're in charge, they're in power. What are we going to do, right?
Hmm.
They feel powerless. I hear that all the time from other countries. What can we do?
Hmm.
They're the
Hmm.
elite, we're not, and they're just accepting that fate. And in Panama, the division between the castes, you would say, of economic, you know, um, the economic diversity is not so diverse. It's either here or there. The in between is like very few and sparse. They're all kind of like middle class. You can't be upper middle class. You just jump.
Hmm.
And so, that's also a psychological dynamic of the people. This is why they let them talk, because they're like, hey, they feel powerless. It's not like they're going to come in and storm the parliament and drag us out with our hair. They don't have the balls to do it. Am I wrong on that assessment? Or,
Well, our police is like full on militarized, even though um, our constitution like prohibits a standing army, which is kind of interesting in itself. We have these like semi U.S. paramilitarized police forces that like shut anything down like right away. Um,
so
and
the public doesn't really have a voice. They have a pretend voice. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the so what happened with this mining company, and it brought our constitution into major focus. Like all of a sudden, everyone was aware of the constitution. Everyone was paying attention to like, oh, what does it mean for our sovereignty to be violated? What does it mean to do something actually? And there were huge protests that felt somewhat engineered to me, but somewhat positive at the same time. Like people really waking up, but not like I don't know. It was a little out of control. There was serious chaos here. Like it could have just been locked down. Like food got cut off. Like the food corridor, like getting from the farms to the city, was all cut off. It was a very, very, very strange, chaotic time. Um,
It's chaotic for the whole world, though, right, Lars? I mean, it is very chaotic. We have people that actually have good information that are creating these conspiracy theories to just cause further confusion. And
mhm,
today was a demonstration of what real truth does. It gets you shut down immediately.
mhm.
If you're a benign force, right, they keep you on. Or if you're on their team, right?
Yeah.
Or if you're on their team. Today was a demonstration of, even when you're storytelling, if the story's truth, because a lot of these books, what is that? So many books are written, right? But they're all fiction, and you're like, wait a minute, that's not fiction. That kind of looks true. That movie's science fiction. Wait a minute, kind of looks true. You know, Soylent Green kind of sounds like a documentary, just in a very 0 to 100 level. And in Panama right now, I know that your political landscape is getting very, very concerning. Latin America, Central America, it's going insane. What are your thoughts on that before I bid you goodbye? I'm so happy to have you on. I wish my Chinese people on WeChat would come on, but none of them. They're terrified. One of them was like, I could come on with a ski mask. I was like, nah, dude, they'll ping you out. So left him. Like he DM'd me directly and was like, he's the one that puts the WeChat channels and they change them and obfuscate them so the Chinese can actually watch, right? And he's the one that creates the multiple channels. And there's like 800 to a million people watching at all times, but I'm a nobody, right? But I've got Chinese, I've got a percentage of that population, 1%, that listen, because they want a different thought process. Because believe it or not, the Chinese are trained to think in non-linear fashions too. They're industrialized, but if you notice, Chinese people are extremely intelligent because they've learned to make connections because they're not being fed from A to Z. They go from A to L and back to A, and then they go to Z, right? Panamanians right now, speaking of linear, it's fucking not. I'd like your perspective living there on how you see the banking industry with politics and what they're pushing to you guys. Because we've already seen what Mike Saylor, that massive crypto whale has done in Central America. Has he come over to Panama? Has that conversation started yet there with the digital currency where it's AI driven and super safe?
Well, first, I mean, before I leave, also, I wanted to say thank you for hosting and thank you for everything you've done. Un segundito.
Un
I actually
segundito.
I actually grew up in China for a few years, so
Oh,
I really appreciate the mode of thinking. And I looked into like our superintendency of banks already got a framework for digital currency, I think a few years ago, and but it's not properly discussed. It's everything can happen totally under the radar here. Like the biggest stuff is totally under the radar. And I'm sure that there's a big new political movement that's very independent, but will say zero about anything true. And um, and another thing is our elections are coming up in 2024 in May.
Yeah, everyone's having elections in 2024. Oh,
Yeah.
in May when we start war with China. Holy shit.
Well, and China's been
That's
here.
right. I just made that connection. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So there's a lot coming down. Our political party that's in power right now was the one that was in power before the '89 invasion, when our democracy was installed. After we got rid of that regime, but that
Hey, our
party's in
US
power now.
Navy came down there, didn't they? Our US Navy came down there in 1990 and we helped that installation, almost like we helped install in Iran too. But keep going. I'm sorry. I just had to throw that shade because I know who shut me down now. I just got, yeah, go. Sorry.
I've been wondering about that naval officer who came here at some point and set up language line, but I haven't quite figured that out.
Oh. I had contracted with them many, many times, and it's interesting. They moved on to Costa Rica now. Most of their centers are now in Costa Rica.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I think we're having like a controlled clean out of the government in a certain sense. Um, the elections I feel will be totally controlled. If not, we're under major international heat for this mining contract rejection, and there's like a multi million-dollar international trade dispute brewing right now, which is going to run into the election, and I think
In
that's
regards to what? For the people that don't know.
right. So this big mining company, which happens to be about 18% Communist Party run, it's
Gold,
like a
copper,
copper, copper,
of
copper,
course,
which has
copper.
its
Own dealing
applications.
properties. And remember, if you want to keep your hands clean, have a piece of copper and rub it on your hands. It's better than anti whatever bacterial shit they sell you in a bottle.
Yeah,
Yep.
and that also connects because our power went out on Christmas Day for hours in the whole entire country, which also affected the water system. Um, and and that felt coordinated to anybody that you would ask here in Panama. They're like, well, why on Christmas Day at 10 in the morning would the complete power grid get compromised? But anyway, this copper company came in years ago, and they set up, like, they got a bunch of land and basically made this contract so expansive that they could open ports, they could mine, they could create electricity, basically have a little country inside of Panama. And that violates our constitution, but it took 20 years to fight back against it. And then now the country successfully rejected that contract with the mining company, but it's going to go into arbitration. And so all of our country's resources, political resources, were put to like fight against this copper mine. And now Little Panama is on the defense now, basically.
And what do you think is going from there?
It's 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 really hard to say. I think it's really hard to say. A lot of people are very worried that the mine doesn't want to move, it doesn't want to budge, and
Who
it'll
owns
just
the mine, though?
well, is it
See, is it
it's
Chinese?
it's 18 to
Does it say
19% Chinese.
way?
It says wait.
Wait.
Uh I'm a lot of people are very concerned about it, and China moved into Panama in the last administration in a very huge,
Leasing
and
ports, right?
yeah,
Like they did to all the nations in Africa, South America, Europe, to help with the
yeah,
IMF, of course. So then you have to wonder who owns the IMF now, right?
sounds, yeah.
Didn't the Panamanians lease all this stuff because they had IMF debt that was ironically created as of today in 1945, along with the World Bank, of course.
We are completely in the bank's pockets. Several banks. There's other smaller, like the BID is also another one.
Yeah, but they can erase them in a heartbeat. They flex their power. I was so excited that today, out of all days, I got my Christmas gift from YouTube. You know, and censorship is the tool they use. We use truth. I mean, shit. I used fiction to mask truth, and still got me nuked.
I love the use of fiction, and I found that art is the way that I'm able to communicate things in any kind of fashion. And I in homage, I use the time traveling, and I use technology and phones to convey this sense that time was never linear, and that idea is an organizational project, and we don't need to be organized in any certain way. It's a spiritual journey and a spiritual quest, and that will pave the way for everything. The pave the way for the way that we want it, the way that the people want it. It has to be the path has to be walked, has to be made as it's walked. It's not like this thing where you can just follow the rules and things are going to work out. And um, I don't know. It's hard to always be in that mind state, but
It is. It's extremely difficult. It is extremely difficult. Well, Lars, I have to wrap it up. I just wanted to say thank you. Um, you know, you're one of my international listeners. I thank you. I'm excited that I got your email. And I should be doing this more often at the tail end of my shows. Maybe I'll do it again tomorrow and figure out a way that it's more intuitive rather than relying just on Sai, who also has a job. And he's, you know, the best way. I'll figure out a way. For now, Sai, I'm so sorry that I gave you that responsibility, like on the fly. Thank you, though. I want to wish you a happy new year. And I hope in these last few days of what they tell us is this year, that we reflect upon the story time I had, which is now only on Twitter and Rumble and will be on iHeart and whatever. Um, because it's important that we sit and ponder on things. And just like many people across the world are doing, I know the Panamanians are trying. I know a lot of people are. They're seeing this and they're like, this is just a shit show. Like, where do you start? Where do you finish? You can't even see the beginning or the end. It's like Ouroboros. Once you get to the tail, you're like, shit, it's in the mouth. I'm at the head again. Where do I go? Right? So you're kind of stuck. And so I appreciate the fact that many of you are seeking truth and pushing for truth in the way you can. And it's really important that we meet people where they're at to get them to have a better understanding and have more control of their own domain themselves, specifically their thoughts, because people keep telling us how to think. And people do analyses in order to influence the way we think. And that's another thing we need to start being aware of, because when people are religiously, oh, this is perfect, oh, this person tells me, no, they're just telling you what you want to hear, and because it agrees with you, you go with it, rather than look at all the cringy ones and random people and people like in CNN that are completely scripted. Because as you know I had on Enjoy the Show, it's important that people realize that everything is scripted. And I know the Panamanians are a little bit smarter. It's how do you get them to have that gusto of the past prior to the 1800s of demanding that they be heard. And that's a big obstacle, especially when it's been beaten into you through marketing, et cetera, that there's only two classes and you can't make that jump unless you sell your soul. And that's not true. You can make that jump without selling your soul, and that's something that's being pushed on other nations. And this is why people are sold the yellow brick road dream in America, that there's steps, whereas there's a big gap or ravine that you will never jump because you're not one of them. So I look forward to seeing more of your posts. Thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to say to everyone around the world that will be listening or watching?
I feel like honored just to be on this screen. I think this group, um, you know, with your unbelievable contributions, the amount of content. But I believe it's like this. it's reverberating around the world. People really have no idea like how important this is. And um
Truth. How important truth is. We've lost that. Yeah, we have.
yeah.
We think that it's going to come in with lipstick and pearls and dancing around with fancy optics when it's always humble on a donkey. And it's, this is a digital donkey, what we've got going on, Lars. We're on a
Wow.
digital donkey. And it's my honor to have you on here because, we would have never crossed paths. Well, we might have because I do travel, but I don't know if I can go to Panama. But I'm just saying, like, this is interesting because so many of us see there are benefits of technology where we can
Hmm.
actually reach out and use those 6 inches between our ears together and join and have conversations. So it's an honor for you being on here to me, just so you understand that. Maybe I'll be in Panama at some point in the future if God allows, you know, and we'll break bread. Or maybe you'll pop over to the States. I'd love that. I'd totally buy you dinner. And I do. For whoever I meet, I totally love to break bread. Thank you. Thank you for coming
Likewise.
on here. I appreciate you.
Bless you all.
God bless you, Lars. Have a wonderful day.
You as well. Take care, everyone.
Thanks. And everyone, that was Lars. And he is, a listener. He is a fantastic contributor too to a lot of the things that we put on in the chats. The chats that everybody hates for some reason and tries to infiltrate. It's pretty fascinating. So I will make sure that I get you guys at some point, all of you, on here at the end of the show. We're just